Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Fanasaster. This is Battlefield 1. In today's weapon review, we're going to be taking a close look at the Burton LMR LMG, available of course to the support class in Battlefield 1. As per usual for these weapon reviews, we're going to be looking at the unlock requirements of this weapon, the stats, the properties of it, how it compares both the different variants amongst themselves, as well as other available LMGs to the support class in Battlefield 1, and last, but certainly not least of course, we're going to be taking a closer look at how to get the most out of this weapon when using it on the battlefield. Starting off then with the unlock requirements. For the trench variant, you're going to have to get 50 capture point defense kills. That means killing somebody while you yourself are standing on a point that your team holds. Relatively simple, the enemy doesn't actually have to be on the point you're defending, you simply have to be on the point you're defending. Obviously, operations, front lines, or of course Conquest is going to be your ideal game mode to unlock this weapon in that format. For the optical variant, you're going to have to get 50 kills with the trench variant, as well as resupply 100 different allies. This of course is relatively easily done. When it comes to the stats then, well, the Burton LMR is interesting. It has a maximum damage of 23 and a minimum damage of 17.5, making it of course a 5-shot kill, essentially a pre-time to kill damage model to a certain extent, and I believe at this actually the only LMG currently in the game to have a beginning 5-shot kill, which means of course that while its fire rate at 830 rounds per minute is most impressive, it isn't as impressive as it would sound, given that its damage output, its time to kill, is relatively similar to that of the BAR 1918, albeit in close quarters slightly better. Its muzzle velocity on the other hand is worse than most LMGs out there at 520 meters per second, comparable to some of the better SMGs in this department. Its magazine size, similar to the BAR at only 20 rounds, is of course relatively small, and its reload times, while relatively consistent, are on the slightly longer end of things for the size of magazine you're dealing with here, at 2.8 seconds for the short reload and 3.2 seconds for the long reload. Recoil is where this weapon can shine, with a vertical of 0.36 and horizontal, that's to the left and right, of 0.27. It's one of the more stable LMGs, especially given its damage output. It's very stable and rivals the BAR 1918 Storm for actual time to kill for recoil. The one caveat to this is that there is a first shot recoil multiplier with the Burton LMR Trench that is more significant than most weapons out there for the LMG category of weapons at 2.5. Now, spread values are on the better side, but roughly what you would expect from a trench LMG, given that there isn't many of them out there, with 0.24 ADS, that's while aiming down sight and not moving, 0.56 for aiming down sight while moving, and relatively good hip fire, at least for LMGs, at 1.834. Enough to get the job done relatively comfortably in close quarters. What I would like to note, however, that is unlike trench SMGs, this weapon doesn't have a first shot spread multiplier for hip fire at 1. Meaning that much like when you ADS fire this weapon, it instantaneously becomes relatively inaccurate compared to where it once was, compared to SMGs, and doesn't remain as accurate. Nevertheless, for close quarter situations, this weapon is more than capable of doing the job when it comes to hip firing matters. The remaining spread stats then are as follows, with a spread increase per shot of negative 0.085 and a first shot spread multiplier, as previously mentioned, identical between ADS and hipfire at negative 5, you're going to require 7 bullets to return to your maximum accurate state, just like the BAR, meaning that you're actually through more than a third of your magazine by the time you're actually once more at your minimum spread, your maximum accuracy. Now this weapon of course has a partner in an optical variant which differentiates itself slightly from the trench variant. The most obvious difference of course is the optical sight. Either you love them, either you hate them. I personally prefer the iron sights of the trench variant over the opticals and generally tend to focus and enjoy the trench version more simply because of that reason. But it is not the only difference between those two variants. Besides that, you also have a difference in horizontal recoil, with the optical beating the trench at 0.238 to the left and right, versus the 0.27 of the trench variant, meaning at medium long range it is going to be a more stable, a more accurate gun by extension of that. It is also more accurate in the spread department while aiming down sight, with an 0.18 ADS while not moving versus the 0.24 of the trench, and an 0.42 ADS while moving and aiming down sight versus the 0.56 found on the Burton LMR Trench. However, the optical, of course, loses out to the trench when it comes to all manner of hipfire values, coming in at 2.75 hipfiring while standing and moving simultaneously versus the 1.834 of the trench variant. I would like to note, however, at this point that actually, when it comes to hipfiring, the trench is noticeably better, but the optical gets the job done when you generally would hipfire with this type of LMG, almost really assault rifle style weapon. Much like you would hipfire with, for example, a Hellriegel, you wouldn't hipfire with a Hellriegel as you would with an MP18 trench. The same goes with the optical version of the Burton. It's reliable hipfire for close quarters, but don't try and stretch it beyond what it should be and you'll be just fine. The last difference to note is a difference in spread increase per shot and spread decrease. Essentially what it comes down to though is the same as it would with the Burton LMR trench. 7 shots to maximum accuracy. The LMR optical just tends to increase a little bit more. Given of course that it's coming from a lower ADS to begin with, this only makes sense. We move on then to talk about the Burton LMR in comparison to the most popular LMG in Battlefield 1. The BAR 1918 Storm, and specifically the Storm variant, because many people have criticized the Burton LMR from completely breaking the LMG category of weaponry, clearly being the outright best LMG out there. And while upon initial analysis of the stat this would seem to be the case, many people seem to be forgetting that this gun actually needs 5 shots to down your target, and thus its time to kill is either identical to the BAR Storm, at long range slightly worse, and in close quarters slightly better. Further, the BAR Storm has better horizontal recoil, although worse vertical recoil, which actually means that for those who are capable of controlling vertical recoil, the BAR 1918 Storm is the better choice for the medium long range engagement, especially when compared to the trench variant. This of course taking into account also that the 1918 Storm, BAR that is, has a 1.7 first shot recoil multiplier versus the 2.5 on the Burton. What the BAR can't offer, however, especially versus the optical variant, which is clearly the more medium range focused of the 2 Burton LMRs, is accuracy to the same degree. The Burton LMR has the better base ADS while moving, but in the end, for the first 7 shots, it's similarly inaccurate to the BAR, and once you're actually at your minimum accuracy, I would argue that the noticeable accuracy difference between an 0.18 and 0.24 ADS isn't going to be enough to get you a kill, or at least not consistently make a difference, unless you're using these weapons at distances where really you should be using one of the more long-range LMGs. That's not to say that the Burton isn't excellent, especially at close medium range. It has good recoil values, it even has the option of a bayonet, and for me personally, really the trench variant is what really makes this weapon so strong. Because if you want a flexible weapon like the BAR Storm in trench variant, you end up dealing with a significant quantity of recoil. Don't get me wrong, the 1918 BAR trench is a good weapon, but it will never compare to the LMR trench, the Burton LMR trench, which comes in with lower recoil, generally equal or better accuracy stats, and in addition to that, in close quarters, although a small, slightly better time to kill. So for those looking for more variety in their flexible but medium range focused weaponry, the LMR optical is an option, but not necessarily a replacement for the BAR Storm. The differences there between recoil and performances are small, and there's no argument really to be made for the optical being overpowered or significantly better to that of the Storm variant. If you go for the more close quarter focused but still flexible weaponry, the trench is however hard to argue with. It is competing with the BAR Storm at its ideal engagement distance, slightly worse but still competing, while maintaining clear dominance in close quarters, especially over a more close quarter focused variant of the BAR such as this trench. Therefore the conclusion is, if you're looking for the best, most flexible LMG in Battlefield 1 as of now, it probably is the Burton LMR trench by a small but definitely noticeable margin. With all that being said, I'd love to know your opinion on the Burton LMR trench optical and its comparative performance to the BAR 1918. So leave that, as well as of course your usual video suggestions down below in the comments, or hit me up with them on Twitter. If you found this video interesting, helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.